Welcome to another edition of Boxing Info. I'm your host, The Islander. This is the third take and the third try to do this, so let's hope we get through it without any more crazy interruptions. Okay, this is going to be the results show from a couple of things we covered last week with the preview of the pay-per-view fight coming up this coming weekend. And I just want to go over a couple of things. Friday night fights, Martin Honorio scored a almost shutout 12-round decision over Wilton Hilario of the Dominican Republic. In this fight, I kept, it was so one-sided, and so, Honorio was outclassing Hilario that I turned it off a few times to flip over to other things. I come back, Hilario's on the canvas, start watching it for a while, Honorio can't get rid of him, and then next thing I know, flip away, come back, and they're coming down the stretch of the 12th round, and it's no big surprise that, Honorio won just about every round in the fight. I'm a little surprised because I thought, Hilario coming in with an undefeated record, that this was going to be competitive, but obviously he was not ready for this step up in competition. Good win for Honorio, who's coming off a couple of fights ago, dreadful first round stoppage by Robert Guerrero, and for the featherweight title. Giant Tapia made a comeback, knocking out his, I didn't see this, former sparring partner Jorge Reyes in New Mexico in the 4th round. I think the guy was on like a 17 or 18 fight losing streak. Saul Alvarez scored a 3rd round knockout over Brian Camicius in Mexico. Another good win as the Alvarez Express keeps chugging forward. Didn't see that either. Victor Archinian defending his title against Rodrigo Guerrero. Can that guy take a punch or what? Darchinian looked pretty good. Has he looked better? Yeah. Has he looked worse? Yeah. But did what he pretty much had to do. Scored a near shutout. Was never really in danger in the fight. Just another classic, almost mismatch, or I should say, just total outclassing of Guerrero, who looked tough as nails. The big conversation in that fight centered around whether or not they can get a rematch with Nonito Donaire, who holds one of the interim titles to one of the ones Darchinian actually really legitimately owns. And Gary Shaw, I guess, is now more amenable to making that fight because, there's limited options at 115, 118, 112 pounds where, and I say limited options on this side of the Pacific. Almost all of the names are over on the other side of the Pacific, or the title holders that, make big money over there and have the lengthy title reigns. As we were talking about Hasegawa and Montiel. But neither here nor there. It was a good win for Victor Darchinian. Good turnout in L.A. And, I shouldn't say L.A., Rancho Mirage, California. I mean, it's all greater. And then came the surprising ending of the fight on HBO, in which Devon Alexander scored a surprise 8th round stoppage over Juan Urango. A little point of interest on that on the undercard. In between fights, I read, and it was, I think, right before the Harrison Cuello Steve Forbes, who beat Steve Forbes by an 8-round decision, went on. I don't know if it was before this fight or after this fight. There was a huge delay from what I read, and the delay was that Don King had something specifically printed or painted on the canvas, and HBO disapproved of it, and they had a long delay while they painted the canvas to get rid of that emblem or that whatever the message was on the canvas. I can just imagine, if you're not Golden Boy Promotions, you can't have your name or your website or anything on the canvas if it's going to be televised by HBO. I mean, I'm not saying that's what it was, but obviously, I just remember from years on by, there's that big crown, it said Don underneath it, and you knew it was Don King. And, I forgot what the canvas even looked like when Alexander and Urango were fighting. But in any event, this fight, basically took off the way I thought it was going to take off, with Alexander doing all the early scoring, controlling the movement, controlling the distance, his speed being a factor, and occasionally Urango would get through with his right hand, specifically his right hook. Didn't look like he ever really scored. He did try to dig to the body, but didn't look like he was really scoring except on the elbows. Now, I'm not sure what you all thought, but I pretty much did not think that that fight was a shutout or Urango had only won 1 round before the stoppage, because a lot of those rounds after the 1st and 2nd round were close enough where, again, depending on how you're judging this fight, the guy coming forward making the fight and actually landing power shots was, you thought of doing damage, but they only had him winning one round in the fight. I think it was like the 6th round, and I kind of disagreed. I thought he'd won another round or two in there before the stoppage, and the fight was actually starting to hinge and turn in Urango's favor as he put on the full court press. It's what got him knocked out, because in the 8th round, when he was looking to throw a wild right hook, Alexander brought a right uppercut from the canvas up and crashed against Urango's jaw. And at first I thought to myself, I didn't know it was more the effect of the punch or the fact that he swung with that right hand and missed and got hit at the same time that caused him to stumble and fall backwards and fall flat on his back. As he jumped right up, I thought to myself, well, we'll see if he's really hurt if he goes after Alexander, which he did. And again, and I don't know if it was Bob Papa who said this, he was actually correct. That right hand, it was more of a straight right hand or a cross that hit Urango on the temple before he hit him again with the right uppercut, did actually knock off his equilibrium and was the cause of the second knockdown. I actually think he was correct on that in that call. And again, Urango got up before the count of 6, and Benji Esteves called the fight off. Nobody had any complaints about this except Urango throwing up his arms. I'm thinking to myself, he's got all his faculties about him. Why don't you just let him get knocked down and maybe count it out? That's just me, but neither here nor there. We know who was going to win the fight. The fight was in the bag at the second those knockdowns were scored. I mean, it was over for all intents and purposes. Even by the scorecards, it was going to be over at that point. This was a career-defining, watershed-type moment for Devon Alexander. Every fighter has one. It's usually not this early in their career, but then again, he may have more of them, and I would expect he is going to have more of them. Fine-looking fighter. The questions about a guy like this, are answered in a fight like this until you scratch the surface a little more and say to yourself, was Juan Urango made to order for him? I mean, he's got a good height, good reach, good athletic ability about him. Alexander does, and you have a guy that's charging straight at him to be pop-shotted. Yes and no. I think he came through the fire in this fight because Urango did put him under fire, but at the same time, against Junior Witter, there was a clever guy who was not going to get hit with bombs that Alexander still dominated and made quit. I think it was a really excellent performance, and I'd be lying to you if I said that I was not shocked by the way the fight ended, because I thought for certain when I previewed the fight that Alexander would win a runaway decision or Urango would stop him late. I would never thought that Alexander would stop Urango. It just didn't come to my mind that was a possibility in the result of the fight. So I mean, an awesome win, and just an awesome. This is what's right about boxing: two guys taking a risk, for a better future or a better payday down the road, and actually it's going to pay dividends for Alexander. Urango, he's not out of the picture yet, but I'm sure he's going to be. If he doesn't get back on the winning track quickly, he's going to be kicked into the opponent/journeyman status. And that brings us to the schedule for this week, which, again, Friday Night Fights is going to have something out there. I would be reading off the board, but the markers are, out of ink. My little girl comes in here and just, draws pictures on the board until they're just dry and then leaves them with the caps off. So I can't read off the board anymore. In any event, let me find where I was reading from, because there's craziness on this schedule. And sorry about this. Okay, March 12th, according to the schedule now, in Grapevine, Texas, on Fox Sports Net and Fox Espanol, Tyson Marquez is taking on Richie McPrenum in a 12-round junior bantamweight fight, and again, this is scheduled, Sam Peter fighting Nagy Aguilar in a 12-round IBF eliminator. He's going to have to look impressive to get another shot at the Klitschko's. I mean, he's going to have to look real impressive. I know he's going the Vladimir route this time, but, Omar Chavez is also on that card. Several other fights. I think even Ben Tacky, who I'm going to talk about in a little bit. Yonkers, New York. I don't know who this Daryl Madison guy is. Paul Spatafore is fighting in Fort Lauderdale, continuing his comeback at welterweight against Ivan Fioretta. in Liverpool, England, main event Paul Smith versus Tony Dodson, 12 rounds for Smith's British super middleweight title. Just as important on that card, guy I've seen fight, some of you have told me to watch him, and I've been very impressed with him at welterweight. Kell Brook taking on Krzysztof Bienius, I'm going to assume from Poland, or one of the other Eastern European sovereign nations. 12-round WBO welterweight eliminator. Now I ask myself this, I've seen Kell Brook fight, he's impressive, he's an up-and-comer. If they actually forced Manny Pacquiao to defend his WBO title against Kell Brook, what in the world would happen? We all know the answer to it, but neither here nor there. It's a 12-round fight he's in. Keep an eye on that guy. I'm not real big on prospects, but the way this guy moved and punched and commanded ring presence, I should say, caught my attention, even though I was watching him on YouTube. And then March 13th, Arlington, Texas, HBO pay-per-view. Manny Pacquiao taking on Joshua Clottey. There are some other fights on this card we can talk about. I don't know if they're going to show Salvador Sanchez, who is Salvador Sanchez's nephew, taking on Jaime Villa in an 8-round fight, with John Duddy taking on Michael Medina. I'm pretty sure they're showing Alfonso Gomez taking on Jose Luis Castillo, which is going to be bruising. And I expect Gomez, unless he's in awe of Castillo, to win this fight. He's just going to be way too big and strong for Castillo, and and this is really bad when I say this, even a little bit too quick. Humberto Soto taking on David Diaz, 12 rounds for the vacant WBC lightweight title. This is going to be an interesting fight, because if anybody can take what Humberto Soto is going to dish out, it's David Diaz. It's going to be a sloppy fight at times. It's going to be, it's going to be sloppy because it's going to be conventional against southpaw, but at the same time, this is a good measuring stick to see where Humberto Soto is, because I think they're using this fight as a measuring stick to see if he could be a potential opponent for Manny Pacquiao, should Pacquiao start sliding back down in weight. But I'm just speculating when I say these things. Soto, I would give Soto the edge in this fight. Normally I would say a big edge, but I hope he understands how important this fight is. How important it is for him to get away from, to be impressive and get rid of Diaz. Although I think Diaz, we'll see how much he has left after the beatdown Pacquiao put on him. I'm going with Soto in this fight. The extra weight may also be a factor against Soto, but I'll still go with Soto. And then the main event, Manny Pacquiao versus Joshua Clottey. I mean, there's a lot to say about this fight. I'm getting emails from all kinds of people saying, Pacquiao's not fighting the best, so-and-so's fighting the best, Mayweather's fighting Mosley, who's the number 3. Look, enough of the Mayweather-Pacquiao crap. The fight's not happening right now. The fight that is happening is Pacquiao against Joshua Clottey, who is going to be, a stiff challenge for however long it is a challenge. One thing I will want to say, I'm usually very sour and negative and down on HBO. But I will say I watched twice now, in successive days, the All Roads to Dallas, the countdown to Pacquiao and Clottey, and I thought, I don't know about you guys, but I thought that was the, by far, best of those shows I have ever seen. The best of the actual useful information that was given, and again, it was all condensed into one episode as opposed to 4, I know, but think of the plots and the twist in this and that. Will Pacquiao have a letdown? I've never seen him have one yet. He's the one guy, and the other thing about the preview show is that the commentary that they got, or the sound bites from the experts and the journalists, were like, just, I thought, the best ever. Whether it was Keenan Mulvaney, or it was, not Steve Kim, Doug Fisher, with what I thought excellent points and counterpoints to some of the plots that they were laying out in that show. First off is that Manny Pacquiao always delivers. That's one of the things that makes him, I guess, as endeared to people as he is, because it doesn't matter whether you hate him or love him or you don't want him to win or you want him to win, he delivers on fight night. Even in losing effort, he does. Now, obviously he's fighting Clottey, who's going to have certain physical advantages over him. Will he have a letdown? And You know, I'm up in the air about that. I doubt it. He's there to perform for his people, for his country, you know, to keep this train rolling. The other thing is the Clottey trainer situation. I don't know if they're making just trying to make good drama with this Lenny DeJesus, you know, comment about I don't need to see Pacquiao, I worked his corner, he's the same fighter. And Keenan Mulvaney pointed out he's not the same fighter. He is, you know, far more polished than he was when Lenny DeJesus last worked with him. That is spot on correct. And I will say that if that is really how they feel, you know, Joshua Clottey's going to be in some trouble. Now, aside from all, you know, that show, which I'm going to say that was my favorite of all those shows ever, just because of the meat that was in it. My initial take on this fight was when it was made, Pacquiao by unanimous decision, pulling away from Clottey. The work, just on work rate, just on pure work rate. He does, you know, I don't know that he can hurt him, but even if he does hurt him, I'm not sure he can. You know, Clottey's very good with his defense. I mean, he keeps his hands high. He is able to block punches. He's able to lean back away from punches and still be in punching position. You know, I am guilty of selling Clottey short because I thought that he was just, you know, got all this hype around him. But, you know, you think about it, with the exception of his low punch output, he delivers also. And with him, you know, comes this serious threat of a guy who can come in the ring 170 pounds and take everything Pacquiao throws at him and even make Pacquiao miss some punches. The most dangerous thing about Clottey is he's very efficient with his punches. He may not throw 100 punches around, he may only throw 40 or 50, but he lands a very high percentage of them. And a sharp puncher like him is one that I expect to give Pacquiao problems. He doesn't have to wind up and hit you with hooks to the body. He doesn't have to wind up with big looping shots to the head. They're very straight, precise shots. The thing that worries me about my prediction being off key with, you know, from Pacquiao winning a decision to Pacquiao winning a stoppage is listening to Freddie Roach, because, you know, I've kind of taken what he has said in the past with a grain of salt. But at the same time, he sees something in those tapes, and when he does see these things in the tapes, they usually come true. Whether it's, you know, the fact that he's going to stop Oscar, the fact that he's going to knock out Ricky Hatton quick, and the fact that he's going to stop Cotto. Now, it may not have happened exactly like he predicted, but it did eventually happen. And I don't see how in the world he's going to make Clottey quit. I don't think there's any quit in that guy. But there is something he sees in Clottey's game that they're going to try to exploit. I don't know whether they can do it. You know, what are the intangibles? You know, how can Clottey win this fight that I don't think he really can win? How can he win the fight? By being patient, by fighting off his back foot, by countering like he always does, countering with straight punches. You never know. One of those right hands may open up a nasty cut on over Pacquiao's eye. It wouldn't be the first time that's happened. Couple in a few more, and it may make the cut even worse or into a gash, then the fight has to be stopped. You know, that's a significant way that he could win this fight. As far as getting to a decision, I don't see any way in the world that he can do it, unless he just starts, you know, hitting Pacquiao with counters and scoring knockdowns, which I don't see that. It could happen. It very well could happen, but I don't see it happening. You know, Pacquiao, same as he did against Cotto, same as he did against Hatton, same as he did against De La Hoya. Move, stick, get in, punch, get out. Move, reset, get in, get out, punch. He could do that for 15 rounds. He could do that for 20 rounds. And if he does it without getting caught, and even if he does get caught a couple of times, if he does that like he always does, he's going to win this fight going away. I don't think it's at all a walkover like everybody thinks it is. I think it's going to be a very tough, tightly contested fight. You know, Clottey is a lot more durable than Cotto is. And I think personally Clottey's a lot more durable than De La Hoya and Hatton are. He may be more durable than all three of them put together. It's whether or not he's going to work enough. If he fights more like Ike Corte does, or did, than Ben Tacky, which is like he normally likes to fight, those are his best chances of winning. That's going to be it for this show. We'll be back next week to review. Thanks.